parents not capable of seeing the child for who they are, or themselves for that matter. This cycle of toxic behavior, cycle of addiction, cycle of attachment, all the insecurity and fear that we have to confront. And love does confront. But you can see how, these various visors that I've mentioned, the intellectual visor, the scientific visor, the academic and activist visor, and the visor of political views, and the visor of the bohemian. All of these can prevent direct perception. And I went through a series of crises in the last couple of years. I had serious health conditions with COVID, long COVID. I had a divorce, quite a difficult divorce. I had some very difficult experiences with people trapped in the mother complex. As I emerged out of that, as I saw into the challenges of the mother complex and the father complex, which I think is a rite of passage of maturity. Those things mean, like, there's the mother archetype and the father archetype, and those are healthy things. They're like how the masculine and the feminine show up in your life and in the stories in your life that supports your peace and your stability and your sanity. But the mother complex and the father complex, that's more about the dark feminine, the dark masculine, and the dark feminine tends to be much more challenging on a certain level. Don't associate those words with men or women. When I say feminine, I'm not talking about women per se. When I'm talking about the mother complex, I'm talking about how, because a man or woman can be trapped in the mother complex, but it's about, like in the fairy tales, you have this evil witch, and she's very cunning, much more often than the dark wizards, and it's sort of because our bond with our mother is so primal and powerful, and we're nurtured or not nurtured healthily by the mother figure, and we can be overprotected or you can be rejected, and all of these things go into the psyche, and you see it play out in very bitter battles over power and authority. And I had a horrific experience of this at a university where, all this intellectual machinations and games, women are better than men abuse women, women are unfairly treated, there's this horrific patriarchy that's abused women for centuries. So the whole mythos that creates the victim mentality that is just, it's got nothing to do with sanity. Nothing. It's getting caught and trapped in the endless cycle of trauma and justification of victimization and attacking the victimizer and attacking victims. And it's, you see it with the Jewish people that got abused by the Nazis, and now they're doing the same thing to the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are doing the same thing to the Jews, and it's just this endless cycle, the Russians and the Ukrainians, the Northern Irish Protestants against the Catholics, my tribe against your tribe, and this humanity, or the feminists against the chauvinists. The humanity is lost. There's insanity, there's no nation or tribe, there's a human being. And the majority that can see this doesn't get trapped in these petty squabbles and power struggles. But it's almost impossible to avoid those projections in this world onto oneself by another who's stuck in that. But then my teacher, he said, I am determined to see differently. And not one of you in this room know the state behind that word. I mean, when he said that, that was like one of the greatest gifts I've ever experienced. And when he said, you know, few of you will get to know who you are before you die. That's a long time to live, you know. People live 80, 90, 100 more years now. And you won't get to know who you are. What are you missing? Well, these visors that I mentioned, you know, they will trap you in the insecure ego mind. They will make you a victim or a victimizer. And there was this bolt in me, like there's something about this world that is completely crazy. And when I say bolt, I don't mean the thing you screw in. I mean like Usain Bolt, something that ran very fast with great urgency to voices that clarified something I had, this sense in my gut that you had to go into this sort of second womb, into this cave in your mind and your heart, and die to all of these visors and arguments that support the neurotic mind. And if you don't do that, it doesn't matter how many accomplishments you get in the world, but you fall short of your potential. I mean, to end fear in your mind, who are you going to turn to? Who are you going to, you want to go to the warrior, the physical warrior that wants to beat shit out of people. You're going to go to him as an example. He's full of fear. He wants to hurt other people. Hurt people. And if you're really interested in ending fear, then you have to heal your hurt. And of course, physical medicine has a part to play in that. I'm not putting that down. But true healing is about ending attack thoughts and defense thoughts. Seeing the innocence in monsters. I mean, it's just very simple. If you love people enough, they will heal. And not because you did anything, but because you refuse to become a victim of Maya. The Indian word Maya means projection. And by projection, I mean the projection of your insecurities and judgments and condemnations onto others or self. And that's really the root of all illness. So, I just constantly found traps, booby traps in all these visors. And I suppose in the Course in Miracles and in yoga and Advaita Vedanta, and certain aspects of science, and certain great poets and writers, you do find the crack in everything where the light gets through, to quote Leonard Cohen. But, the greatest line perhaps in the Bible, in a way, is, there's a couple great lines in the Bible, but, Adam fell asleep. He never says he woke up. and Adam means all men. But the other greatest line, the one I was wanting to reference, is from the book of Job. And it's a very difficult thing to understand. Because if you're tortured, this line is hard to fathom. And it's, if you're a good person, you're abused. But the line says, the transcendent wisdom says to Job at the end of his trials, or as he confronts the marrow of the problem, it says, you're doing this to yourself. And what that means is that you are spiritual. You are spirit. I am spirit. I am that I am. And so the identification, in crisis, when you're facing your fears, when you're dealing with abuse, it's very difficult to sit as Job and say, well, God, why did you do this to me? Or why life, even if you don't believe in God, why would life throw me these horrible curveballs? And Krishnamurti would say, like the enlightened being, or the sane being, or the happy being, lightened from within, is someone that doesn't have a center. There's no important or wretched person there. There's an observation watchtower where the blemishes of time and space can't stick. It's like water off a duck's back. There's awareness and presence. And time, in terms of having a calendar meeting or planning something for a business, that's where time exists psychologically. But in terms of it being wed to this insecure identity, well, that disappears when you're really serious about looking at what's looking. And so if you're not really serious about what's looking, you have Palestine and Ukraine, and you have me and mine, and you have this horrific lack of love in the world. But if you are serious, you have no judgment of that. And you're inspired in whatever way to act, in whatever way suits. But what I've always admired about these great people that I've been drawn to is that they're not interested in fixing the problems of the world, because they can't be fixed externally. Humanity's problems cannot be fixed from the outside. All problems start in the mind and end there. And I was like a lost sock or a lost shoe, I didn't find a fit in the stories of people that walked through my life. The closest I found, I suppose, was in science and writing and literature and yoga. And these profound teachings. And so that's why I, ended up creating Sutra Novum, because what is this thread of meaning that's always new? That sutra means thread of meaning, or thread, but it's associated with meaning in the Sanskrit language. So the thread of meaning. What is the thread of meaning that's always new? Well, it's that you are spirit. You are not your traumas. You are not your errors. You are not your successes. You can be proud of your successes, and you can learn from your errors. But you are something very peaceful. You're not your illnesses. You're not your story of upset with your husband or wife, or your mother or father. You're this thing which is holistically masculine, holistically feminine, not sexually, but like a marriage of the nurturing feminine, healthy nurturing feminine, and a marriage of the healthy, purposeful, nurturing masculine. And I'm not speaking about genders, but what I've noticed is that, you know, you go out into that messy, mucky world, and like the world is full of people projecting their traumas and insecurities and violence and aggression and conflict, inner conflict, out onto others. And they just can't see that all change happens at the level of cause, in the mind and the heart. The wounded heart is not healed by the world of effects. You have to see that you're projecting. And when Tara Singh said to, you know, to that group, not one of you in this room know the state of behind the word determination. You know, he was inviting me to this cave that I was so allured to at 16, that there's a place you can go where others have gone to transcend your heritage, to transcend everything that conditions you. In a negative way. And all the attachments that you put on things that condition you in a positive way. Well, you have your preferences. You know, eat what you want to eat. Find a way to live in this crazy world so that you prioritize seeing it as a forgiven world. And by forgiven, I mean you see through the illusion of the lie of the insecurity of the mind. And that brings about a healed world. Doesn't mean that all the problems of the world end. They go on. But you cease to be an emissary of those problems, because you've recognized that problems of mankind can't be solved externally. They can be remedied, they can be ameliorated externally, but the root cause of human suffering is in the mind. Compassion is in the mind. Kindness is in the mind. Affection is in the mind. Patience is in the mind. Open-mindedness is in the mind. Trust is in the mind. And the lack of all these things is also in the mind. Affection is in the mind. Healing is in the mind. And the body becomes the story of the effects of either anointing yourself with the waters of this wisdom, or denying that wisdom, denying it. And most people don't even know what that means. When they attack another, when they undermine another, when they judge another. And the conflict that the energy it demands to live in that state, the wretchedness of that character. I'm better than you, you're better than me. I'm not good enough, I need to become something to be better, and that was my education, was realizing that that's essentially, it's okay for like a profession or a skill or a trade, nothing wrong with, getting better in that sense, competing with yourself to improve your lot in life, that's fine. But I mean this sense that this education will make you a better person, when really education is about undoing the illusions of who you really think you are, to find out who you actually are. And so it was an interesting thing to go and look at this person who I haven't had communication with for a long time, and to see the story of my journey to undoing all the illusions about myself. And I've sort of found a glove that fits in terms of a trajectory in life after a lot of searching and a lot of inquiry. And it's basically, a creative venture around products and services related to the, focus on liberation from fear. I can't see any other profession that would suit me. I mean, I'm creating a shop, I'm working with graphic designers, I'm writing, and I'm creating a brand or two. But that's just a veneer, that takes a lot of hard work, and it takes effort, and it takes a sort of sense of this is the right fit for me. That's the right livelihood, because I haven't fit so much into the world. Never wanted to, really. I wanted to find that cave where I could be determined to see differently. And you can find it doing anything that suits you outwardly. It's not about your external story. But I've found that bolting lightning to be urgently connected with what matters, determined to see differently, determined to see peace, no matter what, to be free of judgment. That alienated me from my spouses, alienated me from being part of cliques and systems of thought that trap and ensnare. And it brought me to loneliness. And on the other side of loneliness is this wonderful sense of individualism, individualization, Individual means not divisible, part of the whole, unified. And I don't think it matters what you do as long as hopefully it's not, supporting attack thoughts. I could never kill another man. And all the difficulties, all the crises I've been through in relationships, not just with, wives or lovers, women lovers, but difficult people in my life, difficult experiences. They've brought me to the door of looking at that attack mechanism, that upset. And they've brought me to this urgency to be determined to see differently. And it's a gargantuan effort for most human beings. It's a Goliath effort to find that capacity to see with the eyes of love and not condemnation or attack, to not judge another by their actions, to discriminate to the best of our ability what's loving and not loving and how to act in response to those things, but not to judge. And you will find people in your life, you can think of them immediately, that you can say, I didn't like him because he did that or she did that. And they're really difficult characters to look in the mirror of what's looking at that person in you. And looking in that mirror to recognize that horrific image that you've projected holds the redemption. In the wound is the healing. Because once you see the lack of innocence, the condemnation, all this plumes of smoke and mirrors that come from your projected insecurities, you're led down the path of a saint. Saint, the word saint comes from the word that we have for sane. It's the same root. Sanity is this cleansing of the projections of perception. So this inner ideal that I'm not worthy and have sinful images that I promote about others and myself, ultimately about myself, because all that we see in others is a projection of what we believe ourselves to be. And you sort of, you sit at the door of that realization where, like, well, peace is my nature, love is my nature. To see that nature in others is my authentic state, no matter what the stories of the world try and do to alter that. And temptation means that you will attack and defend and condemn. And the ego is very good at it. Whatever visor of life